Hi everyone. I'd like to thank you all for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers. I love horror so much that I would be talking about, investigating, and writing it anyways, but it's just so much better when there's people to do all of those things with and for. To celebrate 1,000 subscribers, I want to do a giveaway. Like this video and leave a comment, and subscribe if you aren't already, and you'll have a chance to win a copy of The Killer Collection, an anthology I put out under my company NBH Publishing, featuring 60 stories from over 20 authors all around the world, many of whom you probably know if you are at all into the creepypasta and no-sleep community, as well as various pieces of Nickbotic horror and 100% true merchandise. I look forward to reaching 2,000 subscribers next. Let's make it happen. Anyways, let's get to it. So, this is indeed a video on one of the most elusive internet mysteries there is. This is an overview on the baffling situation, but more than anything, it's a message. Not to the subject of the mystery, but to all the people who... well, just watch. A strange, and likely very sad case on the internet, and one that has been extensively covered elsewhere, but intrigues me enough to do my own video on it, is that of an unidentified woman who has only left her home a handful of times since at least as far back as 1996. Despite thorough efforts to identify this woman and learn what exactly is keeping her in her apartment, no rational explanation has ever been found, but there is one that is far more likely than the others. It's time to investigate Chip Chan. The woman who had come to be known as Chip Chan was first discovered on 4chan in a thread in which people would view unsecured webcams and post back with their findings and share the feeds. What initially drew people to her channel was the fact that this woman was on the floor of her room in what appeared to be a wildly uncomfortable position. With the kind of morbid curiosity only present on 4chan, users flocked to the woman's webcam feed because they thought she may be dead. As it turns out, she wasn't dead. She was sleeping. And sleeping would become a hallmark of her channel, as the woman sleeps for abnormally long amounts of time, on a seemingly sporadic schedule, and in increasingly bizarre positions, often on the floor, or sitting straight up in a chair, or with her body contorted in strange ways. She has been known to sleep for upwards of 20 hours. And while this woman's sleeping habits may be odd, they don't even begin to scratch the surface of why she has become an internet phenomena. Also in the way only 4chan, and Reddit in a pinch, is capable of, a user discovered this woman's WordPress blog, which in turn led people to several more blogs that she kept, and her story got a whole lot more interesting, and worrisome. Through her blog posts, and later through audio clips that play over her live streams, this woman claims that she is being kept in her Seoul, South Korea apartment by a corrupt police officer to whom she refers simply as the letter P. Despite her situation, she does not call the police for fear of P finding out. The mysterious P also leads to why this woman has come to be referred to as Chip Chan, although I should point out that this woman has made it clear that she hates being referred to as Chip Chan, and prefers to go by the name Jane, so out of respect to her, I will refer to her as such from this point forward. Jane claims that P keeps her confined through what at one time she believed to be a mind control chip that she first discovered, quote, at a cartilage bone 3 centimeters off the ankle bone. The location of the chip has changed several times, such as when she discovered it over her left eyebrow and later in her brain, with Jane believing P to move it whenever she finds the location. Another feature of the chip is that P can use it to render the woman unconscious at any time. However, her opinion on this has changed as well over time. She has gone from believing she is implanted with a simple chip to having a mind control weapon inside of her. The distinction is minimal, as the functionality of whatever she believes has been put in her is the same, but to Jane, the difference is significant. It is also worth mentioning that while Jane typically stays in her apartment, she has indeed left at various times and for various reasons, including to move to a different housing situation entirely, and more than once. And while her blog post suggests that she has traveled extensively, from New Zealand to Canada to Australia, the validity of these claims is something that demands being questioned. But wherever she's living at any given time, the state of this woman is worrisome, as she virtually always appears disheveled, unclean, and in poor health, with the fairly regular occurrence of rash outbreaks on her body. In a recent blog post, she detailed a tooth extraction she performed herself, having removed a molar because she believed the chip to be implanted under it, a post that featured a detailed account of the horrors that P subjected her to, including multiple movements of the so-called Vera chip and dragging her through the street. In fact, anything that happens, Jane generally attributes it to P. Any lapse in streaming is, in her mind, the result of P causing her computers and other electronics to malfunction. According to Jane, she faces bouts of incontinence that stem from P not allowing her to use the restroom at her own will. In Jane's mind, P is the bane of her existence, the mysterious, corrupt police officer who keeps her caged up like an animal for some inexplicable reason. Many think that Jane's constant, almost perpetual live streaming is her cry for help. She claims to need assistance from the public in combating the forces working against her, but when that assistance is presented, she turns it away. But I'll get to that in just a second. Sometime between 5 and 10 months ago, Jane stopped streaming. Her YouTube channel went dark, along with the other locations of her live streams. Since then, the only connection Jane has had with the outside world has been her blog, which is written entirely in Korean and contains a heartbreaking look into what this woman is going through. And that brings me to my overall point. I think it should be fairly obvious that Jane is not being held captive in her apartment. It should be fairly obvious that there is no Vera chip implanted anywhere in her body. And while these things could be true, and Jane could be telling the absolute truth about what's going on with her and why she has been in her apartment all these years, the likelihood of that is slim to none. It should be obvious that Jane is a severely mentally ill woman who has resigned herself to her delusions of being an unwilling captive, controlled by outside forces through mind control. I'm not a doctor, nor is Jane my patient, so I, like everyone should, will refrain from placing a definitive diagnosis on her, though several of the symptoms Jane exhibits are reminiscent of schizophrenia, paranoid or otherwise. But as I said, only her doctors should place that label upon her. And Jane doesn't have a doctor. That's because Jane has refused all medical intervention. Some speculate that P is a healthcare professional, but an unfortunate fact seems to discount that. Mental health care in Korea is virtually non-existent. The fact of the matter is that we simply don't know. What we do know is that Jane, or whatever her real name is clearly a very sick woman, who more than likely is living on disability, but even that can't be said with 100% surety. In the years since the discovery of her webcam stream on 4chan, many people have tried to locate her and help her, with some even being successful in tracking her down. But to bring it to my overall point, the most important part of this, and the express intention of this video, she should not be tracked down. I will repeat that. Do not track Jane down. Jane does not want the authority of South Korea's help, and she most certainly doesn't want yours. She is a mentally ill woman who would undoubtedly benefit from medical intervention, but her illness won't allow her to accept it. The landlords of her various homes are aware of her and her lifestyle, as are local police. They have attempted to intervene on numerous occasions, to no avail. This video, while being an account of one of the internet's most enduring rabbit holes, is a proclamation to everyone who wants to put on their bright, shining armor and ride to Jane's rescue. Don't. Jane has a support system that is there for her if she needs it, however limited it may be. This woman is clearly paranoid. I would ask people attempting to track her down, how do you think she would react to strangers showing up attempting to sweep her off her feet and get her help? Or worse yet, how do you think a woman who is convinced that a corrupt police officer is using mind control on her would respond to a bunch of cops showing up at her door if you were to call them. Needless to say, it wouldn't go well. Jane is an adult. She is an adult who needs help, but refuses it. Help cannot be forced upon her, no matter how strong your desire to help her is. I've even seen people go so far as to say that they should travel to Korea and effectively kidnap her in order to marry her and give her citizenship in the US, with the user claiming that she is quote-unquote charming and that he wants guardianship over her. The same person seems to be fetishizing her, going so far as to write fan fiction about Jane and Joaquin Phoenix's iteration of the Joker. And while I'm never one to kink shame, it seems that this particular individual may have some, let's say, outside-the-box sexual proclivities, which includes fantasizing about quote-unquote rescuing a mentally ill woman keeping herself confined to deplorable living conditions through means of what amounts to abduction. No matter how you look at it, no matter the supposedly noble intentions behind it, that is downright creepy. To me, it's far creepier than any troubled woman who broadcasts her bizarre lifestyle could ever be. So leave Jane alone. Let Chip Chan stay the mysterious rabbit hole that she is. The best thing any of us can do is hope to whatever higher power there may or may not be, that someday Jane accepts help from people who are qualified to give it to her. Chigwe soan, Jane. Tonsene kongongye. I'll see you all next time, and thank you again for 1,000 subscribers.